בתור ילד היה מפתח משחקים לשכנים שלו. מאז הוא הפך לאחד המשקיעים הדומיננטיים בעולם הסטארט-אפ. הפורטפוליו המגוון שלו כולל השקעות בתחום הגיימינג, פלייטיקה, ועד חברות מתחום הביולוגיה הסינתטית.
Bringing CRISPR out of the lab and into everyday life.
גיגי היה אחד המשקיעים הראשונים בפלייטיקה שהוא מכר אחרי זה ב$4.4 מיליארד. הוא גם היה המנכ"ל של 888, טייס בחיל האוויר, והיום הוא שותף בקרן ההון סיכון NFX, קרן השקעות בשלב הסיד והפרסיד. 3 פעמים שהרגשתי שאני לא יודע כלום מהחיים שלי. מול אבא שלי, מול האוניברסיטה ומול גיגי. המשותף לכל המקרים הוא שראיתי מולי אנשים שיודעים הרבה יותר ממני. ולמען האמת, בכל השיחה הזאת אני הייתי יום פוחד או מרוכז למות.
Because for actually to grow, which is...
גיגי באמת בן אדם חכם. יש לו פאקינג סולמות לספרייה שלו. גם אני רוצה סולמות לספרייה שלי. בכל מקרה, אני מקווה שאחרי הסרטון הזה אתם תוכלו לראות דברים שאחרים לא. בראיון דיברנו על אפקט הרשת, אפקט שגיגי והקרן שלו מאמינים שהוא האפקט הכי חשוב לסטארט-אפים בשלב הסיד והפרסיד. דיברנו על אפקט הרשת במשחקים, דיברנו על קריפטו במשחקים, דיברנו על למה קריפטו זו תעשייה מבטיחה כל כך. סידרתי לכם למטה כדי שתוכלו לקפוץ בין נושא לנושא בקלות, ואם אהבתם את התוכן אל תשכחו לעשות לייק וסאבסקרייב. זה יעזור לי ליצור עוד תכנים כאלה. ללא עוד הקדמות מיותרות.
In today's talk, first I want to talk about the NFX, so people will get a little bit to know what you're doing and what you're all about. So, and I think that regardless of startups, network effects is one of the strongest tools to enrich our lives because it helps us to facilitate the connections with our partners. So please, can you explain what is network effects and why do you feel it is crucial for startup to build network effects early on?
Sure. So generally speaking, network effect is a phenomenon that's not new. The first time we can read something regarding network effects is actually in the annual report of the Bell phone company in the United States in the beginning of the 20th century, where they have this funny statement where they say that at that time competition started, there was no interoperability between the networks, and they're writing something that says, we're happy to report to our shareholders that we're seeing a phenomena where customers are choosing our network and not the competition because all the people they want to speak to are already on our network. And so generally, network effect is this phenomena where you're creating a network and then every new user that's joining the network basically gets huge value from everybody that's already in the network. And then that extra person adds some more value to the existing network. So the easiest way to think about it is thinking about a Facebook as a company or like as a network. And so when I joined Facebook today, assuming I never had an account before, the fact that all my friends are already there is going to give me immediate value. Think about the alternative of joining a new Facebook, which is completely empty with nobody. I have nothing to do there. I'm adding a little bit of value because now my friends can also get my content. So it's just a little bit of value or my likes, but I'm getting huge value from the people that are in it. So that's one example of a network effect. The beauty of network effect is that as it scales, it becomes stronger and stronger. So what I just said about Facebook is true, of course, when there's only 2 users on Facebook and the third one joins, because the alternative of joining something that has nobody clearly is worse than joining when there's 2 people that are uploading content. But when there are 2 billion people uploading content and I'm joining, then the vast scale of what I can end up getting makes it a very, very strong network. Another example of a network effect is a marketplace. And so if we think about companies like eBay, that's been around for so many years, and in a second we're going to talk about defensibility and what makes network effect so strong. But think about eBay, it's not really a great product. Like it looks the same thing that it looked like years ago. It's not phenomenal in any way. But the marketplace network effect means that every buyer that comes in gets to meet lots of sellers, and every seller that comes in gets to meet many buyers. It's called a buy-sided, a dual-sided marketplace. What makes it so great is that even if you don't like the product, if I want to sell my bicycle, then I will come there because there are tens of millions of people or hundreds of millions that can buy my bicycle. And if I want to buy a bicycle, even if I don't like the product, that's probably the place I'm going to go because there are thousands or tens of thousands of people selling bicycle. And so the combination of this in marketplaces, the meeting of demand and supply at scale or networks the extra value that the user that gets from the rest of the network is the network effect. Now, over the years, we've looked and analyzed network effects. It's the reason why we've done a lot around it is because in analyzing the tech market, we found out an amazing thing, which is that around 70% of the value created in tech companies came from network effects companies. Okay, so Facebook, Google has a data network effect because every time we search, we make the algorithm better. Apple has a network effect, not on the iPhone, but it has it on the App Store, right? It's basically a network effect between all the app developers and all the app users. Amazon, when they're selling, it's scale effect, meaning it's just big. But when somebody else is selling, and now most of the things on Amazon is what's called Amazon Marketplace, then it's a network effect. And so when you look at the businesses in tech, you see that around 70% of value comes from network effects companies, but only around 25 to 30% of companies that we see are trying to put network effects in their core. And so when you think about where you want to focus, probably you want to focus where network effects exist. Now, what is the importance of network effects? So, and here people many times get confused between network effects and viral effects. Viral effects are when you play Candy Crush and when you're out of lives to try and win, it tells you invite a few friends and you get another 5 lives, right? Invite 5 friends, get another few turns. That is a viral effect. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get me to basically send you the game so that I can get something. But the reality is that it's not really a network effect because I don't get any value from you joining the game. I don't really care if you join. All I care is to get my free lives. So that's a viral effect. That's not a network effect. The network effect means that the core product itself gets more value because there's a network, because the network is alive and kicking. And so when you look at these network effects companies, they're probably the companies that we like the most, right? It's Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter on the consumer side. It's companies like Slack on the business side. Salesforce has the Salesforce, what's called the Force Store, where they sell apps on top of Salesforce. That's the network effect. And so we decided that that's where we want to play. Now, you need to understand that when you think about a startup, the one thing you want more than everything, you want it to grow fast, you want to be able to raise money, but you want something that's called defensibility. What is defensibility? Defensibility, it's probably easiest to explain by saying that, let's say that I invented a pen, and the pen is great. And this pen is slightly better than other pens. And now today people are buying my pen. And that's great. But tomorrow somebody's going to come with a better pen. And if I did not manage to turn my competitive advantage into what's called defensibility at this point, then I'm probably going to lose my business. And so this defensibility can be based on a bunch of different things. So let's start with the easiest one. In the past, people used to think that IP is defensibility, meaning I've got a patent on something. But the way things work today, and especially in software, these IP patents don't really give you long-term defensibility. So that's sort of gone. It is still valid, of course, in biology and in pharma, where the IP holds for longer. But that is one thing. Then you've got something that is called brand. So you can build a brand that is so strong that people actually prefer to buy your product than other people's product. One could say that, in a way, Apple enjoys that more than anything else because you can see companies like Samsung or Google running around and putting out phones that are not worse than the iPhone, and still everybody that can, or many people that can, buy the iPhone. And that is, of course, many times because of the brand of Apple, right? So the brand basically gets customers to be loyal and want to be associated with the product. The third one is what we call scale. Scale is basically when you're huge, when you're Walmart and you're buying not just, you're not buying 1,000 loaves of bread like a supermarket. You're buying millions or tens of millions out of everything. Then you've got scale. You've got the power to basically go and buy it for cheaper and then sell it for cheaper. Or if you're Amazon and you've got so many deliveries that you can build your own delivery network, then the next thing that happens is that you can actually start being better and cheaper and more efficient on delivery. So that is scale. And then the last one before we talk about network effects is basically what we call embedding. Embedding is the ability to basically come inside the product so that you can't be taken out. A good example of this for many years was the Oracle database, where if you built your software based on the Oracle database, taking it out was like, you may just as well have, rewrite the software completely. And so We have IP, we have scale, we have brand, we have embedding, and we have network effects. These are the 5 basic defensibilities. The interesting thing is that when you think about what a startup can do, then as we said, IP works mostly in bio, doesn't work that much in software. Brand is great, but it's very difficult for a startup to say, I want to have a great brand that everybody knows. Well, so do I. But the third one of scale, you can't start huge. There's just no way to start huge. And then embedding, usually startups don't enjoy embedding because it's very difficult for them to convince other people to give them the right to be embedded into their worlds, into their products. And so the only one that is native to the digital world and is native and available for startups is network effect. And so the combination of the strength of network effect and the kind of companies it generates, the fact that more value comes in network effect companies than out of any other type of company, and the fact that it's the only defensibility that's available to startups, got us in NFX, got me and my partners to think that this is where we want to focus our efforts, on companies that either have inherent network effects in their core, or companies that want to put inherent network effects in their core that we can help them putting it. And so when I started the fund, probably 5 years ago now, with 2 of the top network effects guys in the world, one of them is a guy called Pete Flint. Pete founded the largest real estate marketplace in the United States called Trulia and sold it for $3.5 billion, which is a pure network effects business. And before that was part of the founding team of a tourism marketplace called lastminute.com that got sold for $1.2 billion. So Pete had 2 network effects unicorns, and James had founded 7 companies, all of them network effects companies, and sold 6 of them. And so when we sat together and thought about what do we want to build, what kind of fund do we want to build, it became clear to us that the focus is going to be network effects businesses. And as such, we actually called it NFX, which stands for network effects. So that is NFX. NFX is a seed fund, seed and pre-seed, which means that for very strong teams, we will invest also in the pre-seed. Like before there's anything, there's just a deck or not even a deck sometimes. For most teams, we would invest in the seed, meaning that usually it's after the team already built some initial prototype or something initial around the product, and the team basically already has some initial direction. So that's that. And the first fund was $150 million. The second fund was $275 million. We just announced the third fund, which is $450 million, which is a lot of money for seed and pre-seed, which means that we need to invest in many companies. And the average investment is probably somewhere between $2 to $3 million if it's seed, and probably 1 to 1.5 if it's pre-seed. We invest in Silicon Valley and Israel. And we're 5 partners today. So on top of James and Pete, we have another partner dealing with synthetic biology. We can talk about that, but it's the intersection of biology and data and AI. So in synthetic biology. And we have another partner, and his name is Omri Dori. He's one of the top investors in the field in the world. And then we have another partner called Morgan Beller. She just joined us from Facebook, where she was the founder of Libra, then named Novi, then named Diem, now named Novi, so the digital currency of Facebook. And before that, she was a partner in Andreessen Horowitz, and she's amazing. And she's leading a bunch of things, but amongst other things, crypto. So we're 5 partners, Silicon Valley and Israel. 2 of the partners are in Israel, Omri and me are in Israel, and the 3 others are in Silicon Valley. That's NFX.
Okay. That's amazing. I think we will go into crypto later on, but I'm just curious about what do you think about the network effects of gaming companies? How can that be achieved? Because in the gaming industry, in any other form of entertainment, people use the product and then they throw it away once they finished with it, and they are looking for something new, which is similar or different, similar or completely different?
So first of all, in every field, sadly, sometimes the network effect fades away and people end up looking for another product. We've seen this, I think the most extreme example probably is what seemed to be at the beginning one of the strongest network effects companies in the world, called MySpace, which was Facebook before Facebook. And then there was Friendster that was Facebook before Facebook. and both of them had similar network effects to Facebook before Facebook, but they weren't strong enough. And so people got tired of the product. There were mistakes in each one of them. We can talk about the mistakes, but there were mistakes in each one of them, and people ended up moving to Facebook. So network effects can die, despite what people think. It's not that as if they're sustainable forever. Games, you're totally right in that in some cases, games end up having a shorter lifespan than many of the other products. And games vary a lot between them, because when you download a game of, a game of Tetris and you play it on your own, there's no network effects, right? It's you against a computer and really no network effects. But if you're playing a game like Coin Master, which is the Moon Active game, and in this game, what you're doing is you're basically attacking people and stealing their coins from their village. And then they see who attacked them and they want a revenge. And then you partner with other people in a clan so that you can defend yourself better or attack better. And the other person also partners in a clan. These are multiple network effect layered games. The first network effect is how I play with others. Because if I had to play against bots, against robots, then the game would not be as fun as playing against real humans and stealing their money. If I couldn't be in a clan where I communicate with everybody and I tell everybody, hey, let's go attack this, let's go build that, then the game would be less fun. And so that is another layer in network effect. And even the general community, which is trading cards. So there's a collection of cards in the game. They're trading cards. They're helping each other. That's another layer of network effect. And so basically it doesn't sound like a very, like the clean network effect of a Facebook, but in reality, it's a very, very strong network effect. And one of the things we know is that when in these games, when people start leaving, the game starts declining much faster, not because the game became worse, but because the experience of the game got just weaker because the network effect got weaker. And so games, the ones that are social, are indeed very much network effects businesses.
That's fascinating. But I'm just still wondering, what is the process? I'm sure that you're aware of the process of how to make people engaged in those games. Like, it's probably not only network effects.
No, it's not only network effects, and we can speak for hours about that. But probably the reason why I love games is I love games because I like playing them. But the reason why I love games as investments is a combination of two things. One is that just as an investor, it is by far the fastest growing thing when you get it right. In other words, I have a games company that is now, for example, doing more than $200 million revenues, kind of 2.5 years after we invested. I mean, no other business in the world can get to that. So, to that speed. And so that's one thing. But the second thing is that building a good game is probably the pinnacle of good B2C product building, because it has in it everything that you need in a good B2C company. It must have good product design, what we call game design. The look and feel, the actual UX must be great. The graphics must be great. The storytelling must be good. The network effect, or the use of network effect, must be great. The monetization, which is basically how do you convince the customer that they need to pay a little bit to progress the game, is basically better than in any other game. Think about it. Think how simple it is to do a Spotify where it's binary. Either you get music or you don't get, or you get the music with ads and without being able to skip, right? It's like a binary thing. Either you pay the subscription or you don't. And then maybe we add another level of subscription that allows you to also give it to your family members. Okay, very simple. Pricing simple, everything simple. When you think about a game, think about the complexity of how many different packages you can buy. When do you offer them? Do you offer them when the user is winning, or do you offer them when the user is losing? How do you offer them? Do you change it between different users? So monetization in the game, which is very data-driven, is probably 10x more complicated than in any other business. The outcome of it is that I think that founders of games companies are probably the best B2C founders in the world by far. And that is why I still think that games is a very tough field, but one that is super rewarding for top teams and super rewarding for investors that know how to find these top teams.
Then that's true. To build a great product in gaming, it's much more, it's much tougher because the product design is the product. Like people want to have fun in this product, and probably the monetization part is probably also have to build commitment out of the user side, right?
Well, the interesting thing is that games basically have monetization embedded in every part of the product in a way that no other product has. In every other product, almost the paying is sort of external to the flow of what you're doing. Like you're being taken out from what you do in order to pay. In games, what's happening is that you get so many hooks where you can basically convince the customer to pay, not in this external thing, but it's like, hey, you need now 10 diamonds, right? You need these 10 diamonds because you want to go and raid a village. You want to go and do something. You need the 10 diamonds. Of course, it's still external. I would have preferred to not pay, but there's so many such opportunities, a lot more than in any other product out there, which means that that monetization in gaming is probably one of the most important qualities in a games team. Like when you see today games team that doesn't come with monetization capabilities, that's the first question is who's going to do that? And I think that when you think about generally, I think games are in the world are broken down into very very high level. They're broken down into two genres. They're two genres of companies, not of games. One genre is what we call the creative-led. The creative-led is where the game industry used to be in the past, which is you build a game based on what's going to be the best game. And you're saying, if everybody's going to love this game, then money will eventually flow. And theoretically, a game company like this is that many of the AAA game companies used to be like that, but now they're moving away from it a little bit. And Supercell, the company behind the Clash Royale and Clash of Clans, and Heyday, is a bit like that. The other extreme is basically something that I think we invented in Israel, more or less, but now is very available all around the world, which are the data-driven companies. These are companies where, of course, they still need to build a good game, but the strength, the muscle that they have is the muscle of data analysis and data-driven decision-making that gets them to basically be able to get the customer to be more engaged, more retained, and more monetized using data and using smart decisions. Now, of course, the perfect companies are those that have the combination of both. And right now, it's kind of all merging. And if you look at a company like, Moon Active in Israel, it's a company that has both muscles. But even AAA game companies that in the past didn't have to think about monetization and data because they sold the game in a box and that's it. That was the revenues, right? You bought it, you put it in your computer, that was the revenue. But now when everybody wants to have in-app purchases or in-game purchases, when everybody wants to continue to make money and not just get money for the initial download, everybody's moving from just being creative. And then the just data companies are also moving to be also creative companies because there's no choice. What I found out is that while investing in the creative first companies is very difficult because creative first companies are, you're basically betting on creative skills. It's like betting on a movie director, right? You need to believe that they're going to be good. You don't know until you see the final outcome. You don't really know 100%. You can look at their previous film. Doesn't mean that the next one's going to be great. While the data-driven ones are much safer because the minute you know that somebody knows how to analyze data, collect, analyze, and make decisions based on data, they probably would know how to do that for the next game and next game. And which is why I think that investors over the last few years fell in love again with the game industry after for many years not investing in it, simply because they started seeing these data-driven companies, which are a lot similar to tech companies than the creative-driven companies, which are maybe a lot more similar to movie studios.
Yeah, the monetization part is really, really interesting, which make me think about we're also the fintech club. So how do you feel crypto is going to change the ways that the monetization is going in the gaming industry?
Okay, so I think that generally speaking, blockchain and crypto have essentially two interesting elements that are relating to game. One of them is kind of small in its scale, and the other one is huge in its scale. The one that is sort of small-ish is the addition of NFTs to games. And the reason I'm saying it's sort of small, though it's not small, is because realistically, many of the games had NFT-like elements for many, many years. So if you play Counter-Strike, then you're buying weapons. These weapons you can sell them in marketplaces. You can buy them. You can even rent them. There's a company called Loot Bear that we're invested in that allows you to rent the skins. The skins have pricing websites where you know what's the price of such a skin. The trading is billions a year. And generally speaking, the difference between them and NFTs is very minimal because at the end of the day, they behave like an asset, right? However, if you put them on NFT, you start taking away the central control of the developer of the game and of Steam, the platform, on where you can sell them and how you can sell them. And so basically what CSGO, Counter-Strike, and Steam allow, mostly only for Counter-Strike, if we start putting NFTs into the games, would be relevant for every game. And think about it, what happens when every strategy or RPG game or MOBA game that you play suddenly has in it assets that you can actually start looking at as an investment rather than just as something for the game. Or you can allow yourself to play money, to place money on them because you think that they're going to be worth more later. Okay? So that's one thing. And today, if I'm developing today a strategy game, or if I'm developing today an RPG game, not putting elements of NFT into it seems unreasonable to me because it just adds another layer, another interesting layer on top of the game that is going to be relevant and exciting for some people. So that's one thing. The second thing, which is bigger, is this new phenomenon called play to earn. Play to earn is basically a group of games led by a game called Axie Infinity that just raised money at the $3 billion valuation. And these games basically are creating their own currency. This currency is used within the game. The currency is a token. And basically what they're doing is that they're saying that throughout the game, you can end up earning these tokens. And as you earn these tokens, you basically are going to be able to make money. Hence the name play to earn. Now, some will say, and some are saying, that we're basically talking about a smart Ponzi scheme. Why? Because at the beginning, you buy your Axies, you buy your creatures for cheap, and you start developing them, so their price goes up, and they start giving you, the more you develop them, the more the more tokens they give you. Okay. And as they give you more tokens, you can use the tokens to improve them more, and so on and so on and so on. And at the beginning, as more people join the game, the price of these creatures stays maybe the same in the token, but because there's a limited amount of tokens, the new people that want to play the game, they need the tokens. And so right now, getting into the game costs around $600, which is nuts. Okay. And so why do people say it's a Ponzi scheme? Because if tomorrow everybody leaves the game and nobody needs the tokens, then the price of that creature that you bought for $600 is going to go down to nothing. Okay. Having said that, if the game's going to continue growing, the way the token economy is built is such that the token price have got to continue going up, so that you will end up making a lot more money. Now, this became so crazy that on top of Axie Infinity, there is a new company called YGG, also worth billions. And YGG is what's called the Yield Gaming Guild. What YGG does, listen to that, YGG lends money to people that want to get into the game and can't get into the game because they don't have the money. And so YGG lends them money. YGG owns their creature on an agreed percentages, and YGG makes money from basically lending money to people to build their business on Axie Infinity. Now, why is Axie happy with this? Because for Axie to grow, which is a must for the tokens to be in need, which is a must for the token price to go up, which is a must for the play to earn model to work, they need somebody to fund the players so that the players can buy more and everybody's happy. Economy keeps on growing, right? It's like the US printing money. Okay, it's like the economy keeps on growing. At that point, of course, there's a question. Is YGG paying the full price for their tokens? Right? They're very close to Axie. And is there a second economy going on here? And so, on the one hand, this is almost scary because that's now a $34 billion token ecosystem. Although the tokens outside of the treasury is only like $8 billion. So it's an $8 billion economy that is not governed by anybody, where theoretically the founders of the company can tomorrow decide to go away, sell their tokens and disappear, where you have no rights, you have nothing. So that is the negative side. Is that's a very, very, very interesting Ponzi scheme that's going to get lots of people really sad at the end. The flip side of it is, hey, this is an amazing game that got people to make tens of thousands of dollars. It's especially popular in the Philippines right now. So lots of kids in the Philippines are buying their Axie and playing with it. And as long as they continue developing it, it's big enough that the train has left the station. CSGO has been around for 10 years or more. World of Warcraft have been around for 20. Maybe it's going to be around for 20 years as well. And maybe it's going to be this amazing thing where the economy just continues evolving. Who's right? Nobody knows. Right? But these are the two new elements of gaming from crypto. One of it is the NFTs, and the other one is the play to earn model.
Yeah, I think it's a very gray area. I think if I say to my father I'm taking a mortgage to buy Axie, he's going to throw eggs on me or something. But
the question is whether it's a real Axe or whether it's an NFT Axe. So
what about like NFTs that are like when you buy like some gun that can be used in multiple games? Is that something that exciting, or do you?
So the so the theory is that once you put the virtual good on an NFT, so it does not exist on the server of one game, but it exists in general. Once you do that, the reality is that, at least theoretically, it is easier to open it to be used in the next game. So that the gun from one game could be used in the next game. Technically, of course, it's and you could theoretically even say that the gun has characteristics of barrel speed and how many bullets per second and whatever. You can do that as part of the NFT. So the NFT actually includes all the data, so that a new game developer, it's going to be very easy for them to let you use it. Now, the reality is that I think that these things will happen eventually. I think, however, that it's really going to be tough simply because everybody who's strong, like CS, they don't really have any interest for their weapons to be, or their skins to be able to be, for people to be able to use them in a small game, because that gives part of their network effect to the small game, right? So it's really, it's a conflict. On one hand, you're saying if you own the ecosystem that everybody's ending up using, like if you own all the goods, you as the game publisher, then maybe that makes you stronger. On the other hand, you're saying, but by opening it to others, you're basically letting smaller ones enjoy the network effect very early on, because everybody can play there. And so I think that this is theoretically there. One day in the metaverse, in the big metaverse, this is probably going to happen. But we're very, very far away from that. And no game company is really thinking about that very seriously right now.
I think a lot of companies, regardless even of gaming, are not very excited to share their knowledge on a public database. But we'll see. I think that maybe that can be solved by business. For example, if two companies say that once this NFT goes from one game to another, some kind of transaction happens in the background that might work. But if we go into cryptocurrencies in general, I think that there are two narratives that control the public, which I don't think that really explains why crypto has a great potential to become, like it already is, like a multi-billion-dollar business. The first narrative is that we can have like transactions without a third party, which I think it's not very telling the story of why it's very big, because transaction costs are not that expensive. And the second thing is a new way to gamble, which is also not something that will change the world. So if we talk about cryptocurrencies in general, why do you think, like, what is the great potential of cryptocurrencies?
We need a few hours just on that, and there's a bunch of things happening that are very different. One thing is the fact that for the first time ever, we're seeing currencies that are not centrally controlled. The strength of centrally controlled or the weakness of centrally controlled is that then the government that controls it can do whatever they want, aka the United States printing so much money that it's ridiculous. And the fact that the value of the dollar did not diminish is just because the world is in this crazy anomaly. And theoretically, nobody can do that on, for example, Bitcoin. And so if I need to think, where is my money safer? Maybe not right now because there's still a lot of arbitrage, but longer term, where is my money safer than in the in the Bitcoin world? Basically, I'm not dependent on anybody. I am dependent, of course, on the fact that that other people could buy and sell it, but that's true also for the dollar. But there's nobody that can sit there and say, "Hey, I want to now, print more dollars. I want to burn dollars. I want to," and everything's transparent. And so that is, as a store of value, these are theoretically much better than the government-controlled currencies. That's one thing. The second thing that's happening is that these currencies, unlike normal currencies, are basically digital assets. As such, it is very simple, relatively, to attach them to what's called smart contracts, which are essentially lines of codes that tell you what you can and can't do whenever something happens. And so this creates this new world where it is very simple to look at the tech stack of let's take, for example, a marketplace, and say the tech stack of a marketplace basically is, I sit in the middle and I tell you, if you pay me, I will tell him that you paid me. He will send you the goods. When I know that he sent you the good, I will take the money that you gave me and pass it to him, and I will take an invoice from him and pass it to you, and everybody's happy. But in return, I want 20%. That entirety of a tech stack that is today worded in the end user license agreement and the terms and conditions essentially could be represented as code. Because the code basically says, if A commits to pay X amount of money to B upon delivery, and if B then delivers whatever A asked for in a way that is measurable and is certain, then that commitment, which is in the form of locking of my part of the money in the smart contract to be paid, then that can be released to B the minute that confirmation arrives, or a month after, or a week later, or in 3 installments. It's all code. All of these things could be described in code. And so, given that's the case, theoretically, you can take a marketplace as a simplest example and say, why do we need in the middle eBay that takes all that money? Why do we need Uber to connect to drivers and passengers when we know that the app that Uber built doesn't cost billions to build, right? We can build an Uber-like app today for very cheap. The drivers, they don't really need Uber. Like Uber's just bringing them they're bringing the customers, they're bringing the demand, but if the demand came from somewhere else, they don't care. The customers, they don't necessarily need Uber, they just want the drivers. So could we plug out Uber and plug in a mechanism which is built on smart contracts that's going to allow the direct connection between the two nodes in the network without having to pass through a central node? That's the theory. Sadly, however, what we found so far is that it's not that trivial. It's not that trivial because three things. The first thing is that we probably need sometimes a central authority to make sure that there's no problem in the network. So when my driver didn't come, who am I going to call and complain to? If I need a refund, who am I going to call? If the car came in dirty, who am I going to tell? So apparently it seems that that both sides, especially the demand side, they want to have somebody sitting there and being able to be the address for complaints, which you don't have in the decentralized system. The second thing is that the supply side, apparently, they're not really good at promoting themselves. And so they're kind of enjoying the fact that Uber is spending billions on marketing and on acquiring people to use the app. And so they're while they're upset with how much Uber is taking, they don't have an alternative right now for basically marketing themselves to the people that need the rides. And so that's a simple example that shows what is the huge potential. Because think about it, Uber is a $60 billion company, whatever it is. If we could rip out Uber and put it in a decentralized system instead, then that $60 billion value, which is billions of dollars of revenues a year, would be distributed to both sides. The drivers could charge less, right? And the passengers can end up paying less. And so, let's say that the Uber rate, which sometimes is, let's call it 20-25%, let's say that 10% of it would go to the driver and 10% of it would go to the passenger. So everybody would be happier, right? In some cases, it's even worse. In stock photo websites, the website where you buy photos that photographers uploaded, in stock photo websites, sometimes the stock photo website takes as much as 60 or 70%. Think about it. The artist that actually took the shot gets 30 cents on the dollar. The customer pays 100 cents. And the company takes 70%. What would be more logical than taking it all out and saying, hey, no need for that 70%. So yes, theoretically, this is going to change the world. Practically, we are now a few years into it, and we haven't seen a decentralized Uber beat Uber, a decentralized DoorDash beat DoorDash, a decentralized stock photo beat a centralized one. But we're still hopeful that this is going to happen because this theoretically is going to make the world a better place. An interesting element to it is that the reason why it's going to make the world a better place is because the incentives are more aligned. So let's think about it for a second. If I have a central company, the central company's goal is to basically optimize for money. How do they optimize for money? They charge the customer as much as they can charge the customer before the system breaks. If they can take another buck, they will take another buck. They want to charge as much as possible. And then they pay the driver as little as they can before the driver breaks and goes away. Right? And so it's their incentive to essentially mistreat both sides because they want to take more money here and they want to give less money here. In a world of no central company, then theoretically, the only thing that people care about is how flawless the transaction is, how frictionless. And as people are living in a token world, they probably want their tokens to be worth more and more and more. The only way for the tokens to be worth more is if more users join the service and need the tokens. The only reason why people will join the service and need the tokens is because it's got to be very frictionless. And so suddenly we are all 100% aligned on one thing, which is it has to be frictionless. And so theoretically, that new potential structure has dramatically more inherent impact than just the fact that we're taking the 20% and splitting it between the driver and the passenger. It has an inherent alignment of interest, which does not exist today in normal companies, which is why we always thought that this has huge, huge potential, and we're still waiting for that potential to be fulfilled.
אם נשארתם עד לכאן, סימן שנהנתם מהסרטון. שתפו אותו עם מישהו שאתם חושבים שצריך להקשיב לזה.